Hey everyone, you're listening to another episode of Tutia Bruja. I'm so excited to have you on this episode. I mean, I'm always fucking excited. I'm just a very excited, very fire-based person. I'm always like, let's do this, But no, today I'm especially fucking excited. I know that we've mostly focused on witchcraft, talked about elements of brujeria and, just we've talked about so many different topics. But for this topic, I'm going to share a little bit about myself. And so the thing that I want to share before we jump into the episode is that I'm Mexican American, but I am from the land of good tequila. My ancestors were very much involved in the process, creation, manufacturing of tequila. And I'm very blessed to have such a rich history connected to a spirit. I think that creating spirits is a type of magic. What those spirits do to people, sometimes it's too much. But I think it depends on the person. Used in moderation, it can also be the life of a party, right? It can help bring out your best self. And I'm just so fortunate to have that rich history. And it's funny because since we all grew up in this very small space, my ancestors knew a lot of other people who were also involved in the process of creating tequila. So today I am so fortunate to have a conversation with the 5th and 6th generation of the Tequila Sauza legacy. And I'm just so excited. The reason that I want to have them on the show, other than, they're still making tequila to this day, Tequila Fortaleza y Tequila Abuelos, they are both doing their thing. It's really cool. For those of you who don't know, after the 3rd generation, I believe it was, whose name is Don Javier, the company was sold, so the family no longer owned it, and we'll jump into more about that. So Guillermo Erickson Sauza and his son Billy Erickson are bringing it back into the family. So it was such an amazing conversation. Truly, I feel like maybe we are kindred spirits because it just free flowed, and you'll have to excuse how it kind of happened. It was very serendipitous, and I'm about that chaos magic, and I think everything was just so timely. So it was amazing. So before I want to jump in, I have to tell you the actual legend because we don't discuss that in the episode. So I will say it in English and in Spanish, just for everyone here. So I will start in English. So the legend goes that Cenobio Sauza, who was the 1st generation, he was working in tequila, had worked for Jose Cuervo for a time, and that wasn't enough for him. He wanted more, right? He just wanted more. And the legend goes that he sold his soul to the devil in a cave and was able to achieve this huge empire, right? Like this huge tequila empire. But I think the best part is that they say, anyway, that if you go into the cave where he sold his soul, you will hear the words, all or nothing. And you will see so much gold. And essentially, you have to leave the cave with every bit of that gold, or you get nothing. Or so they say. Whether or not it's true, I always just like a good selling your soul to the devil story. And I will say, just because the town is so small, and I've encountered a lot of strange things, but regardless, I feel like the devil gets a bad rep anyway. I mean, what did he do that was so bad, right? Fed someone an apple? I'm just saying. And also in Spanish, la leyenda de Cenobio Sauza es que él para un tiempo trabajó para José Cuervo. Y entonces que él ayudaba a vender mezcal y hacía otras cosas con la producción de mezcal. Pues entonces que eso no fue bastante para él. Él quería más, él quería mucho más. Y dicen que en una cueva se le apareció el diablo y que vendió su alma al diablo. Y dicen que si vas a esa cueva, dicen que oyes las palabras todo o nada. Y dicen que te quieres que salir con todo el oro o no sales con nada. Y así va. All right, so now you're caught up. I am so excited to present to you Billy Erickson and Guillermo Erickson Sauza. You know what we do here. We talk about just all these different things, ghosts and witchcraft. Well, one thing that I've never really mentioned about My background is that I come from the land of tequila. My ancestors were very much involved in the process of growing agave, and the town they're from is so wild. And I needed to tell the story a little bit. So I'm really excited today. I have Billy Erickson on the show, who is the 6th generation of the Sauza Legacy. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, of course. It's my pleasure, Bex. Thank you for inviting me.
First of all, how often do you get to go to the town? Do you still get to go pretty often, or is it like a once a year thing?
Oh, so prior to COVID, I was down there probably every other month or about every 6 weeks or so.
So very active in the, okay. So I get to go once a year. I always make the most of it. And it's just such an amazing town. And it's wild because before the recording, we kind of talked about some of the folklore, which, not a lot of people are aware of. You had no idea until I told you, right?
Yeah, no, that's totally correct. That was a neat little piece of information I shared with my team.
What did they say?
None of them had heard that either. They were quite surprised to find out that my great grandfather allegedly sold his soul to the devil. I didn't actually get the chance to tell my dad, so I'm hoping when he pops on here, I'm interested in seeing what he says.
Okay, maybe you guys can hear me now.
Speak of the devil. They don't come. That's so funny. We've started the conversation, but I'm so excited to introduce Guillermo Erickson Sauza, who is the 5th generation of the Sauza Legacy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
One of the questions that I kind of wanted to ask you, I had informed Billy. Billy was not aware and had told the team, but there's a story that your Tatar abuelo, so Cenobio. Did you know that there's a legend that he sold his soul to the devil?
Yeah, some guy started that here. Tourist people are telling it. And of course, we had never heard that until about 6 years ago when they started this tour bus thing. And some guy started telling it on the tour bus. That's the first time we heard about it. Because they all come by the property here and they bring these tour buses look like barrels. They have one that's made like a guitar. And so they got to tell some stories to keep the people entertained. And since we're kind of a high visible property here, well, it goes with it as far as I'm concerned.
Is it something that you kind of just think is amusing, or is it something you're just like about?
Well, we think we actually know the guy that started it. So, and they talk about the cave in the story and all that. The hard luck that my grandfather had at one time in his life. So, but no, I don't give a lot of credence to it, but I give it, it's something for them to talk about to their tourists that are on their bus.
Honestly, I would embrace it because everyone loves a good, selling your soul to the devil story. If nothing else, why not profit off the folklore,
Yeah, I thought it was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, it's to me, it's kind of a negative. I mean, we all work hard down here, and I saw it as just somebody trying to, they say the house is haunted and in the story too. And I just all right, well. Well,
I will say this though, because I believe, I could be mistaken, but I believe my grandparents bought the house that Don Javier had built that was kind of around the corner from there. And I will tell you, that house is really creepy, very creepy. I was actually just there. I was telling Billy pre-COVID, that house is very creepy. So I don't know. I don't know if that's to say whatever. I think the town personally is just it has a lot of stories. It has a lot of memories, So, and I think that sometimes energies, they stay,
Have you been to visit us yet then?
I have not. I'm really looking forward to, because I will be there this summer. So I'm really excited to check it out.
Oh, well, definitely come. We'll give you a tour and everything.
I will. Don't worry. I love good tequila and I just love it there. And so I will definitely come. And I'm really excited, to have you on the show and promote you guys as much as I can. There's just so many celebrities making tequila now, I'd really love to help keep the money, with the people who are still living there.
Well, there's an issue with that. And the issue is, yeah, certainly a guy like George Clooney who came in and he contracted a brand, who knows what he was paying, $4 a bottle, maybe $6 a bottle, packaged and everything out of a giant distillery, what we call a maquila or a twin plant, but that the word doesn't really translate to twin plant as the people know the twin plant. It's truly a contracted plant. I think he got to about 300,000 cases when he sold, which is a pretty good amount. If you get any brand to 300,000 cases, that's pretty good. And then he sold out to Diageo for, I don't know, $700-800 million somewhere. And then with a future payment of $300 million, which he's probably coming up on. And now Diageo took that brand to 1 million cases. But I mean, you can't go visit the distillery, and you're certainly not going to ever meet George Clooney there, you know?
Never.
So it's a fad, you know, people do that. And certainly we agree with you. The money should stay in Mexico, but it's tough. I mean, here in Mexico, we have a big problem of not being able to get access to reasonable capital. And big companies can get capital for 1.5% interest. Diageo just released 800 million of bonds for about 1.5 to 2% interest. I go to the bank here and need some money to finance inventory growth. They said, well, yeah, 15% is what we'll give you, you know. So small companies have a terrible time competing with the large companies. And then, the capital goes because at some point, people get tired of beating their head against the wall against the big brands, maybe. I don't know. And the big brands offer a lot of money, obviously, to buy you out all the time. I mean, we've been approached by everybody, but I actually made a T-shirt that says not for sale.
Good. Don't sell.
No, we won't. We have the house on the Central Plaza that was my tatarabuelo's home. My great-grandfather, my bisabuelo, and his 6 other brothers and sisters were born there. My grandfather turned it into a museum. My mom did some upkeep on it to fix it, and I'm going to do another major level upgrade to the museum, to the quality of the museum. We're going to invest probably about $500,000 in air conditioning. And we got documents in there from the 1700s. And I can't tell you how many times I've been berated by people that come in and see these paintings in, well, we have the dry time right now, 0 humidity, 95 degrees. And then during the wet time, we go to 60% humidity and rain every other day. And I get berated by people because we don't have these paintings and documented, protected in a environment that minimizes their loss. But that's one of the projects we have on the board. Probably get to it later this year, maybe after the rainy season, because it's a major project. We're redoing floors in there to put them back to original mosaico floors that they used back then. And the house is in very good condition, but we're going to take the opportunity of, we're opening the floors up. We'll run the air conditioning ducts through the floor, and we'll run the new electrical. We're going to put in a grounded electrical system with a lot more capacity, and we'll run the lines underneath the floor so we don't have to cut the walls. It's a true adobe home, a single story, about 6,000 square feet of space, I believe.
Oh, wow. So with your distillery, do you have like a space for people to sit, and like, do you do food and drink like some of the other like places? Like, what is accessible to folks when they come?
So we have a couple packages. We have just a basic tour. You're coming in and seeing the factory. I think the next level up takes you up. We got a lookout point. And the third level is there's an area you could sit. We have a reservoir. We have a flood control reservoir on our property. And so we manage level of that reservoir. And during the rainy season, we drop it a meter or so to absorb floodwaters. And so we have a kiosk out there, and we're actually in the process of turning that open so that it'll be fish tacos. But we do events for people, and like somebody wants to have a lunch on our property, they're able to eat right there. And it's beautiful. It's underneath the leaves of what we call a parota tree, a Parota. It's a very tough wood. It's a very, very big tree, over 100 years old. And we have 2 of those trees. The other one's about 150 years old. So you can sit underneath this tree right by the reservoir, and you're in the middle of the agave fields, and people you're on a ranch. The factory's near the gate, but once you go past the distillery, you're on a ranch. We got chickens running around, free-range chickens running around, and we got sheep. We got about 15 dogs, I think, now, and you're on a ranch. So everybody loves it here because it's all old trees. We have mango trees that are probably 100 years old, and so you sit in the shade of these trees and you enjoy this lake. And it's it's a reservoir, but it's just amazing. And so like if you called up tomorrow and said, I want a tour, or I want to have a lunch, it's only by appointment. You can schedule one of the 3 varieties. They're on the website, and you want to have lunch and, you want a special meal, that our team puts together the recommendation, and they can put together, like, from fish tacos to steak, they can put together pretty much what anybody asks for. We got a contract chef that comes in to helps out. Is a really good guy. It's an experience. I can only tell you that everybody that comes, they're stunned, because really nobody else has an offering similar to that. And we're trying to improve it too. For instance, we're going to add a horse-drawn cart around the property. We're on about 75 acres, which about half are planted with agave. And so you can see different years of agave, and the road around it's pretty good. We got trees pretty much on about half of the road around it. The other half's in the sun. So, it's a working ranch. We actually, there's 6 guys working on the ranch all the time out here. Besides, we got about 80 people in the distillery and in bottling and office people. So, and we have people in the field too, because I've got some other agave fields. So they're out there working in those fields too. So it's a busy place in terms of that, but it's functional. I'm doing very fortunate doing what Cenobio Sauza did. He lived here full time. My great-grandfather moved to Guadalajara. And then when we were growing up, we pretty much came out here during the summers, and we spent the summers out here. So to me, I ate under the mango trees with my grandfather, and I want to keep it pretty much exactly like it was when I was a kid. And it is. My mom did a great job of keeping it the same way. And now it's my turn. And the only thing we built on this property is a garage. That's all we built on this property. Everything else is just kind of fixed up. I tell you, if you were here 20 years ago when we started, you wouldn't even notice. The distillery is over 100, I think it's around 150 years old. And we're still 100% with the taona. We don't have a roller mill or anything like that. So we're still limited to what we can crush by the stone every day. And we do all the bottling on site. And we have been asked to make tequila for many people. Some famous movie stars have asked us to make tequila for them and do a movie here and then promote a brand out of this and confuse the public.
But how dare you make me want to go see this beautiful property that you own? And that's really cool that you've kept it almost exactly the same. I think that, there's so many different things in that town, and it's changed so much. It's wild. Every time I go back, I just see something different. This last time, it had been a while since I'd gone. There's a casino there. Like, what? When did that pop up in the town?
Yeah, out on the highway, right by the drugstore. I think many people, in our generation, I'm a baby boomer generation, we probably don't like change, but there's other people like a Donald Trump who likes to build and change everything, So I think the world's made of these people that see a piece of land and say, oh, I can build a 20-story building there, or a 100-story building there. And then there's other people like me who say, I want it to stay exactly the same so people can have the experiences of 100 years ago. Cuervo, unfortunately, when my grandfather died, my uncle and my mom, we had to split up the assets, and we knew we wanted to keep key assets so that we could start the tequila company one day again. And we were successful in doing that. But my uncle had received some properties, like the property right next to the museum, which was even bigger than the museum property and had most of the center of that block. And he sold it for a song, and Cuervo bought it from those guys. And they actually sold it to Alfonso Rendine, and then Alfonso Rendine put the land into with Cuervo, and Cuervo built this giant 5-story hotel behind us. And Beckman's a nice guy, the owner of Cuervo, and he came to visit us. And, we kept our little museum, and he's bought up almost the entire block for his hotel. There's a couple other holdouts, typical. And now we got a 5-story wall on the back of our museum. But that's what happens. And you got to be able to deal with some of these things that change, because if you're locked in and you say you don't want any change at all, that's just not going to happen. The reality is, in a growing town, and tequila is booming. Agave use is up 50% year to date this year over last year. And that's crazy to see that kind of increase in demand on agave, mature agave. It's a boom times right now for the tequila manufacturers, for the agave growers. Tequila's been growing, 6, 7, 8% a year, which is big numbers for distilled spirits growth. You millennials are drinking too much, I think.
We are. Times are hard. We're coping. And also, I just, it's wild because I worked in a head shop for a little bit here. And, times are changing, and they're trying to legalize it federally everywhere, but it's a whole thing. But it was an essential business during COVID when we were like locked down. And it's just really interesting, the growth in a lot of different things, coping mechanisms, if you will. So I think you're right. I think we are kind of drinking too much and smoking too much. We're just needing to survive.
And try and enjoy it as much as possible. I mean, you can imagine the change that my grandfather saw when he was 8. He lost 3 fingers in an accident on one of the agave mills here. Well, back then it was a horseback carriage ride in 1908 to go from here to Guadalajara, where the nearest doctor was. And so where we can drive in an air-conditioned car now, and there's a tollway, they give you the right to pay you $9 to get there. But you get there in about 45 minutes, and then you sit in traffic. So
the town has grown so much. You're so right. And one thing I kind of want to circle back to is the process of like weed legalization in Mexico. It looks like that's going to happen if it hasn't already.
I agree with you. It's going to happen.
How do you feel about it?
Well, it doesn't. I have a lot of close friends that are frequent smokers. I don't smoke. I never have. I have a lot of friends that smoke. It doesn't bother me. I mean, it doesn't bother me at all. And each to their own. Certainly, I think it'll be legalized. It's another way to relax for people. Yeah. And I know people that need it to calm down. They use it for its medicinal effects. I have eaten it. I've taken it to sleep. My girlfriend turned me on to that. So that's successful if you have small amounts in. She makes like a cookie, and it helps me sleep when you're under a lot of stress.
Or like maybe some cannabis infused drinks, because I've just actually started making a honey, and it's really, like you said, for people who want to sleep, like it'd be a good nightcap.
Oh, yes. And I agree with you. We actually have a bartender getting married here on Thursday. We had to close to tourism that afternoon because we'll have the bartender's wedding here. We do a lot of events here like that. We have fun. We just have fun. And it's great for me. For me and Billy, we really feel like we're sharing this property. And I'm telling you, it's just stunningly beautiful. And it's the only property like this. And in this area, I mean, Cuervo has a nice property, but they don't have what we have. And we're very fortunate, and the people that come just are stunned, and we want to share it. We want people to come and visit us. That's why we're putting the kiosk is going to become a fish taco house for like Baja style and grilled fish tacos, kind of simplifying it so that we can handle a little bit more tourism. And if people want to have they've been here for 2 hours, they want to have something to eat, they can grab a couple of tacos and sit by the lake. And before they leave, they can have a nice relaxing time and get something to eat. We're eventually going to put something at the museum too. It'll be more of a coffee shop with light food. So you could sit in there too in the patio we have at the museum and have a espresso or a shot, or espresso and a shot, and half a sandwich or whatever, or a salad. We want to have something similar to that, so that people can have a nice time, but also get a little bit of food if they're coming from Guadalajara for the day. Most of the tourism we see here comes for the day. We have a couple of beautiful hotels. The hotel that Cuervo made is beautiful. It's a 5-story one I was telling you about behind our property. Absolutely stunning, gorgeous on the inside. It's like an old hacienda too, but it's brand new. And then our neighbor over here at the Branton called Tequileño, he's a really nice guy. He built a hotel too. More of a maybe modern style, but very, very nice. In fact, we're going there tonight for dinner. So it's improved the ability of places to eat here, greatly improved. Like I maybe go to Guadalajara once every 2 weeks. So
that's cool. I'm really happy that you're able to experience like the life of tequila like every day. That's amazing. I'm so happy.
It's a truly pastoral life here. It's a small town. We do go to the bar here. Our friend's a veterinarian. He has a bar, and he's open Wednesday through Sunday, and so we usually go there. Well, since the virus came out, maybe a little bit less, but we usually go twice a week, and we would maybe stay till about 11. Now we go at 7, and we get out of there by 9 because we don't want to be around a lot of people. And so far, I've been very fortunate. We haven't gotten it. we haven't got the vaccine here. They have it here, but we haven't gotten it yet. And so we're being cautious in terms of a social mingling. We haven't traveled really. I travel on a motorbike, but at 60 miles an hour, the virus doesn't catch up to me.
You're too fast for it.
So much to experience here.
Yeah, there truly is. And that's something that makes me really sad when I go to the town because everyone leaves before the end of the day. And I'm like, why? There's so much to do. And I really hope that in the future, there are more places that offer more nightlife, having more of an experience, and doing something you can't just do in any city, in any place, is the difference. So,
well, we keep people busy here that come, we can keep them busy. We're doing about a tour a day right now. So hopefully we get back up to 4 or 5 tours a day. The tours, like I say, anywhere from hour and a half to 3 hours, depending on how much the people want to see and learn. But everything's on site here. So you definitely, when you're coming down, I want you to reach out.
I'd really love to see it. My mom grew up they always call it La Casa Vieja, and it was across from the property bought from Cuervo at one point, which I guess, what was it called? La Quinta?
Yeah. So La Quinta Sauza. So that was bought in 1968 by my grandfather. And what happened was Guadalupe, what's her last name? But she died and she was the owner of Cuervo. And so when she died, she inherited the factory to the Beckman family, who had married one of her cousins. And Beckman is a German name, and the father was a German consul in Tijuana. And they were living up in Tijuana when they inherited the factory. So they had to come down and the factory figure out how to run it and all that. And meanwhile, the lady that died, her caretaker inherited La Quinta. And so she didn't want it. And so she went to the Beckmans. She said, why don't you buy me out? And apparently they didn't have the cash flow at that time. So they said, no, we don't. We just inherited the factory. And so the story was told to me. And so she went to my grandfather and saw him at his office. And she came to him and said she wanted to sell. And my grandfather said, great, what's your price? And I think back then he paid $200,000 for that property, which was in 1968, $200,000, probably equivalent to about $6 million now, maybe 10. But he wouldn't let her out of the office. He said, why don't you stay here? And they got her food and he gave her cash down payment and they had the notary come and sign right there. And Cuervo was furious. Beckman was furious that my grandfather bought the property. So fast forward 40, 50, 60 years almost. And the property across the street from us here is owned by Ramiro Orendain and from the Orendain family, and he's got just about the entire city block. And he comes to me and he's like, Guillermo, I want you to buy my property. And for about 3 weeks in a row, he comes and says the same thing. He has coffee with me and we have a shot. And then the 4th week he comes and he says, Guillermo, if you don't want my property, I'm going to go see Beckman. And I said, no, I want your property. We bought that property, but what really convinced me is that if you look on Google Maps at the whole area, that property had been about 130 years since it last sold. So the properties don't sell here very often. The families, especially big ones, the families hang on to them. And I mean, that's the way it is here. It's a small town with a lot of tradition and a lot of heritage. And so people don't want to give it up. And the same people, the same family lives here years after years after years. And so it's an amazing place. That's what we're staying here. We're not going anywhere. We're going to continue to build the business. Right now, we've got a couple of construction projects going on. And actually, I got 35 projects on the list to give you an idea how busy we are. But I have fun with it. I like seeing the guys working. We bring a lot of jobs into this town. We reinvest 100% of everything we make gets reinvested right here and growing. I have bought some more land, agave land. I bought over in La Quemada, which is about an hour west of here on the old highway. And bought near Magdalena. I bought some land that we've planted with agave too. So I really enjoy it. I really enjoy being out in the fields. I mean, if I had my way would be in the mud and then, right now it's dust because it's a dry season, but in the dirt and mud, I just love being out in the field all day long.
Also, was the woman's name Guadalupe Gallardo?
Yeah, Gallardo was her last name. How she inherited her name was Ana Rubio Gonzalez, and she was married to, I believe it was Jesus Flores. And when he died, she got remarried, and she married the capo or the hacienda manager, who was Jose Cuervo at the time. I have this beautiful picture of him too. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's one of these originals, probably from the early 1900s, and it was a hacienda that he ran here, and we had the hacienda still system until 1910 when the revolution came. And the haciendas were all 5,000 hectareas, and they were giant haciendas. The Gallardos, her father had a hacienda called Hacienda de San Antonio, which is just about 7 kilometers from here. It's in ruins, but it's very cool to see. So when you come, I know the lady that owns it now, and she's a cousin of them, and she inherited it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful hacienda with all 100-year-old mango trees, just about 7 kilometers, if I recall correctly. And we just got to get permission from her to go down there and see it. But it's a fantastic hacienda to see. And the Gallardo name is like on a plaque, and the hacienda was built in 1850s. And it's, like I say, it's in ruins, but it's too bad she doesn't have the money to fix it up because it should be restored. At any rate, so Gallardo's inherited from Jose Cuervo died, and then the Gallardos inherited it, and they were related, but I don't remember the exact way they were related to the family there. I don't remember how that actually worked, but they were childless. The Ana Maria Gonzalez and Jesus Flores didn't have any children, and she didn't have any children with Jose Cuervo either. Now, Malaquias Cuervo, he had children. And the next door neighbor, that was the grandfather of Jorge Saiz Cuervo. And I know Jorge's son very well, or grandson very well. He's a good friend of mine. And they still have, they managed a distillery right next door called Tequileño. They sold out a couple of years back to a Canadian guy who's a pretty nice guy, Wayne. He's a good guy. At any rate, one of the projects on the museum is going to actually get these family trees up. We want to get the Orendine family tree up. Obviously, we'll get our family tree up. And we'd like to get the Tequila Cuervo, Jesus Flores tree up. And we'd like to get the Herradura tree up too, because that's an interesting tree from a standpoint of what's happened with all these brands. I have a book that's fantastic that my great-grandfather put together of all the labels at the turn of the century. And it's a piece of artwork with all these labels that have disappeared. One was the Castellano, which was a factory right next to us. It's been in ruins since 1960s. Cuervo just bought that property about 8 years ago. I didn't know it was for sale because I would have bought it too, because that probably hadn't been sold in, 20 years. But before that, it'd probably been 100 years. The Rosales family was running that. And one of the Rosales boys, he's got a factory called Leidos now, which is a very big factory. So there's all this history of the people making tequila with the families, and it's very interesting. There's a guy named Ted Genoese. He's a writer he's an independent writer, but he's done already some work on tequila. He's writing a book on it, and he's found some fantastic facts. My great-grandfather had to go to Monterrey for 6 years because Malaquias Cuervo had become the mayor of tequila, and he was after him. They were very big competitors, and they were after my great-grandfather, and they tried to put false charges against him. And Ted dug up all that stuff out of the old newspapers. And so it's kind of cool. So he's coming back down to work some more on his book, and he's found a lot of interesting facts out about it. Used to be a pretty violent town. A lot of assassinations and gunfights. Me as a kid, I remember my grandfather always carried a gun. He would sit at the breakfast table, and the gun would come out and sit on the table. I mean, we knew not to touch the gun, Unfortunately, never took a shooting either, but it was just, that's the way it was here. He always traveled with a gun. There was a period of time he had 2 bodyguards with him all the time with machine guns during Luis Echeverria's presidency because, there's some people that say that he sold out to the cartels to make money, and they let the cartels kidnap people to make money. So, anyway, a lot of interesting stories, and this fellow, Ted Genoese, quite an interesting stories. But when you come down, we'll get you up to Los Altos too. I have a friend, my friend Felipe Camarena, and then I know the other Camarenas, Carlos Camarena. So we can get you over to that distillery so you can meet those people, really nice people from up in Los Altos, and you can see a couple of different distilleries that way.
I'd absolutely love to do that. I'm so excited. We've been talking about just a lot of legacies and the future, but like we really need to focus on the past. So like I would really love for you to share your tatarabuelo. I'd love for you to share his story.
Oh, of course. He was born in a small town. Cenobio Sauza was born in a small town near Chapala, Lake Chapala, on the south side of Lake Chapala. It's an agricultural town. In fact, we went up there not too long ago. Teocuititlan de Corona it's called, and it's not many people. And we went up there and we just had a breakfast over there with some people. And surprisingly enough, this lady remembered when my grandfather had gone out there in the late 80s and he was doing some research. And this lady was an older lady and she remembered my grandfather coming out there. But we went to see where he was, the town he was born. We didn't really see the house, but we saw the town. And came out here when he was 16. He came to Tequila because Tequila was a boom town with a lot of jobs and they weren't really agricultural related, but distilling is not really agricultural. And so he came out here and he started his brand in 1873. But I know before that, he worked on Hacienda San Martin. It belonged to one of the governors. So he could read and write. And a lot of people couldn't read and write back then. The only way you got to learn to read and write is there was no public school. So you had to go to the seminary or, you had to go to the priest would teach people. So a lot of people couldn't read and write, and he could read and write. And obviously he was a guy that could move. And so he put his own brand in 1873, learned how to make. Most haciendas in this area had taunas or the stone crushing like we have here. This is not a hacienda here. I think the whole area was part of a hacienda at one time, but maybe 300 years ago, and they started selling pieces of it off. At any rate, he died in 1909. And my great-grandfather took over the company at the time, and he built it into still a very small company when he died in 1946. He was born in 1883, and he died in 1946. And then my grandfather took over, and my grandfather was born in 1903, but he didn't take over Tequila Sauza until 1946. And those were the boom years. And my grandfather had lived in the States a number of years. So he went to school up there so he could speak English and he was aware of the market up there. But he built Tequila Sauza to be the number one brand in the world for tequila. It was the biggest seller in the world. It was larger than Cuervo at the time. But he also had this program called Noches Tapatías, which is just an amazing folklore program of folklore music. And that was the number one show for more than 20 years in Mexico. And he was the producer and the maker of that show and sponsor, obviously, too. And anyway, my grandfather decided to sell when he was in his 70s. 1976, he sold and he kept 30% of the shares, but they soon diluted him. A certain company that never had losses in 100 years starts having losses, right? It's after he sells controlling interest. And so then they start asking him, you got to put some money in because the losses. So they diluted him out of 16, half of what he had been kept with by the time he died. He died in 1990, and it was another 10 years before I was able to put together enough capital to start fixing this distillery. The distillery we have was built, it's over 100 years old. And my grandfather bought this property in the 1950s. And it was not the original distillery, although Ted Genoese, who's been doing some of the research, says it may be. He's looking at some of the historical records. But my grandfather worked this distillery from the 50s to when he bought the property till 68 when he closed it down. And the distillery became a museum. And I mean, literally, it was a relic. And people said I was crazy to bring it back to life. And we have a 1903 boiler. It finally blew up. But it gave us about 117 years of age service. And we started with that old boiler. We had to re-sleeve it, and that took 3 months. And we made our first distillation in 2002, and we sold our first bottles in 2005. And then the hard part was trying to get distribution. That was really the toughest thing. We started with the name Tequila Los Abuelos, and we promptly got sued by a rum company that's from Panama, Ron Abuelo. So we had to change the name in the States, and same company sued us in Mexico, but we beat them here. So we still use the label Los Abuelos, which means we like to use it as the grandfathers, but it means grandparents. And we use Fortaleza label the rest of the world. And we also use it in Mexico. So we sell the 2 brand names in Mexico just so we don't lose Los Abuelos. And we're in 20 countries now. We're in Japan. And I attribute that all, it was tough getting distribution, but we finally figured it out after a few years of knocking our head against the wall. And we're sold in, I think, 39 or 40 states in the United States. And for a tiny little brand, we're very fortunate because we feel we've been adopted by the industry people. And I call the restaurant industry and bar people. And we've been adopted by them as well as we have adopted them. And we're very, very fortunate to get the support of the industry people that they really want authentic, and that's what we provide. No additives, no colorings, no nothing. And we even have a program for industry people. They can actually come down and work in the distillery, and we've had a lot of people take the week. And so if you're industry and like you're a bartender and you want to work here, you can come and work a week. We'll provide you the place to stay and some of your food, but we're not going to pay you. So it's a learning education. And we've had like 100 people take us up on that. So it gives them an experience of how tough tequila is to make, how to harvest, and being out with the harvesting guys and having breakfast out there with tortillas cooked on rocks, and so it's just an amazing experience here because everything's still done the way it was done 100 years ago here in our facility. We do take people to other facilities so they can see, more automation, more modern, like the modern diffuser, that for making tequila, the diffuser is much, much faster and much, much more efficient. It's just an amazing experience for people to see. And I feel like I'm an entire museum curator trying to keep everything we have about 4 kilometers of cobblestone roads inside our property and over 1,000 trees. And I think I'm running around 30,000 agave. I don't remember the exact amount. I should know that off the head, but it's not going anywhere. It takes 7 to 8 years for it to mature, so it's not going anywhere. So if I don't know the exact number, it's okay. So it's a lot of fun. We get warm weather. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with, California inland. We get that kind of weather right now. And then the rain starts in usually middle of June, maybe late June. Sometimes we get an early June weather, but it doesn't really start consistent rain until towards the end of June. And then we get July, a lot of rain, August, a lot of rain, September, a lot of rain. And then October, a little bit less, a lot less, I should say, in October. The storms are shorter. And then all of a sudden, it's like somebody turned a spigot off. We might get 2 light rains in November and 1 in December and maybe 1 in January. And then we don't get nothing again until June. So there's about 5 months with no rain here, 0 rain. So you got to have water coming from somewhere. But then it's like a jungle. It's about 3 weeks after the rain started, it turns into a jungle here. I love it. To me, the weather's been the same as it was 55 years ago when I was a kid. It's exactly the same. There's some changes. When I was a kid, there was no cars here at all. There was no cars. There was 3 cars in the whole town, There was pickup trucks, but there was 3 because the companies all had pickup trucks. But nobody had a car, We had a car in front of our house. And now you can't find a parking place because everybody has cars. But, it's the way it is, progress.
You'd mentioned the importance of legacy and keeping everything the same. And I think that it's so important to pay honor to our ancestors. And I heard that your Dia de los Muertos parties are a whole event in themselves, and you go and you honor all of your ancestors. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So we do a Dia de los Muertos event. We have a couple of restaurants. A very good friend of mine runs a restaurant called Solare in San Diego. Has won a lot of awards for his Italian food. But the owner there, Randy Smirk, great guy, he puts together a trip every year to bring his clients down, and they come down every year and they just have a great hit. We have industry people coming on a separate trip. And then another friend of mine, Clayton Sheck, he's got a travel kind of group for tequila. So he puts together a group of people coming down, and we include it in the party. And it's, it's a fiesta costume party, and it's just fantastic. And then we do go to the cemetery where my tatarabuelo and tatabuela are, and my whole family's buried in the tomb there. And so we go there and we spend some time in the cemetery, and everybody fixes up their graves with this beautiful decorations of magnolia, not that's not carnations. I'll think of the name of it in a minute, but it's the orange flower.
Marigolds.
Marigolds, that's it, marigolds. And then they use a purple one, and I don't remember the name of that. But that marigolds the Indians felt the spirits could come through to the world that way. And so people go and they spend time in the cemetery, and we go every year. We didn't go this year. I feel bad about it, but we didn't go this year because we didn't do any of the events, but I intended to go there and just sit. But we normally go there, and every year we've been doing it for almost 20 years now. And we go and we sit and you tell stories about the people that are gone to keep their lives alive, their spirits alive. And the folklore is that the spirits can come through with the marigolds. They can come through and spend time with you at the gravesite. It's amazing to see all the graves decorated. It's nuts. People are blown away. And I can just tell you, I can't tell you how many people start crying because they don't even know where their grandparents are buried. And we know, I mean, that's our whole family there, and our grandparents are great-grandparents and our great-great-grandparents. And so a lot to this tradition. It does provide a lot of emotion. I love it. I love doing it, though. I love it every year, and we do shots there. It's illegal, but, we're Mexicans, so we don't really obey the law. And
especially not us Tequileros, we're the worst.
IDs? Who needs an ID? What the fuck? Dia de los Muertos is a lot of fun down here for people to experience. Some of your podcast listeners, there's many places to spend. Mexico City does a really good job for Dia de los Muertos, although the hotels all fill up because so many people come down to experience it. And then there's an area in Pátzcuaro, and there's a lake. It's nearby there where the Indians will stay all night, and they put candles out there. The island was a burial grounds. So there's a lot of cool things to see about Dia de los Muertos. Even in the small towns, most people fix up their graves, and it's just amazing what people do. And they're having barbecues in there. Like, we're drinking tequila in there. We're not doing the barbecue in there, but we're drinking tequila. When it's not the day of, we do a couple of events, so we do them a couple days before. They allow me to bring my motorcycle in there and shit. So I got to get my grandfathers to go for a ride on it, They put an altar up, and it's amazing the beauty of how they put them together. And we do ours in the museum, and then in the caves, we do one for all the bartenders that are gone. Our friends that are in the industry, we put up one in the caves, we light it up. So it's pretty cool with candles burning and stuff. So when people come in, not many people knew a lot of the bartenders that are gone.
It's really wonderful. I think that your relationship with the industry is amazing because it's a hard industry. I've been one of the people who have been in it. I have lots of friends who are in it. It's hard, but it's a lifestyle, and those who love it definitely can't stop. Thank you so much, for taking the time and being on the show. This has been such an amazing conversation. How can we support you, keep up with you, and just stay connected with you?
Well, I think the best way is, through our website, where we have a newspaper, and I believe you can register through that. We do have a mailing list. We have a fan mailing list, and they're supposed to be putting out a newspaper, which I know they haven't really been doing, but I'm getting after them and, what's going on here. And we have an industry newspaper focused for industry people. We got there's a lot of people from the industry have been down. We've had over 4,000 people from the industry come down, and fans are coming down all the time. We just really appreciate that people make the trek to come down and visit us and spend a little time here. Mexico's very safe. It's much safer than New York is right now. I'm being serious. I'm not being facetious, and I'm not banging on these mayors in these towns where they're having a crime wave now, but it's very safe here. There is wars, but it's wars between what we call the narcos. They're warring most of the time between themselves, and they really leave the innocent, the people alone. There's crime here, but I can tell you in San Francisco, I can't tell you how many people I know told me they get their windows broken. You can't leave anything in your car because people break in the windows. So But come down. It's the best way is come down, help Mexico out. Everybody that comes down is creating industry jobs down here. And the people really, really appreciate it. I mean, they really realize how much Americans bring down here in terms of revenue with this last year where everything's been closed. And I mean, many, many people have really, really struggled in the restaurant industry, as well as in the States when that started first happening. We did food boxes in San Diego before they got support checks going. And in San Francisco and a couple of the other cities, we did food boxes too for industry people. I mean, they didn't have any money coming in from anywhere. So if you mind me asking it, are you still working in the bar?
So I haven't, circa 2019, I still make drinks and stuff like that. It's funny, actually, that Levo 2 I mentioned earlier, the infuser, they sent me one to promote on the podcast and like use and whatever. But I'm making honey and I'm making like a 4-course meal for all my close friends and making cocktails and stuff like that. So no, I still dabble. I've never made tequila, but I love making drinks. So I think it's, just in the blood.
Well, we get you down here. We'll get you through a couple different distilleries so you can see it. And we'll let you get behind my bar, my cave bar. It's a real man cave.
That's amazing. Is that, I hope that's the infamous cave.
It is. It's the infamous cave. It's pretty big and it's underground and it's not, it's part of it was natural. My grandfather expanded it, but we have a lot of fun in there. I mean, when we have our events, I have a ambassador, him and I kind of, we do an 80s, 90s thing, and everybody just has a lot of fun. And when we end up closing around 12:31 because there's not many people left standing, and we just have a blast. It's fun. And if I had to do it every night, I would go crazy, but I get to do it like 5-6 times a year, so I really enjoy doing it.
Yeah, no, that's fun. I'm personally down to like get lit anywhere, but especially somewhere where it's like a better experience, for sure. Thank you again so much for taking the time. And
Sure.
Check out the show notes for all the different ways to support everyone. This has been such an amazing conversation. You've learned so much about me. You've learned so much about the history of tequila. And thank you so much. This has been I got so much more than I bargained for. The ancestors came in real hard and were like, no, we want you to talk about what you're going to talk about. So thank you again so much, Billy and Guillermo. I hope that you got something out of it yourself.
Yeah, no, Bex, I loved hearing the story. And from our perspective, I think that we're just honored to be able to continue our family traditions and to be doing the same thing that my great-great-great-grandfather started out on our family path for us. So it's a real honor.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk with you and meet. Hope we can see you soon.
We will cross paths, I promise. Y'all, that was the episode. And I just want you to know, I hope you enjoyed it because I had such a great time recording it. And I hope you learned a little bit about the process of making tequila, the history of tequila. And I mean, who doesn't like a good selling your soul to the devil story? You know what I mean? Anyway, be sure and find all the ways to support Tequila Fortaleza in the show notes, also known as Tequila Abuelos. But all the information is in the show notes. And if you haven't had the chance to go to Tequila Jalisco, I highly recommend it. It's a place to go. Also, don't be one of the lames who leaves before, it gets dark. There's so much stuff to do in the town. And, if you like the show, please keep listening. Season 4 starts tomorrow because, of course, that's how my life works out, right? All going to be related to the cannabis industry. It's going to be so many amazing conversations. I can't wait. Be sure and check out my website. It's www.bexbcasting.com. And follow us on social media at Tutia Bruja. Thank you for listening. I love you guys. Can't wait to talk again. Bye. Mm-hmm.